All right. Good morning, boy and girl. Because right now we only have 2 people in here. I don't have anybody online just yet, but hopefully we will. Good morning and welcome to the Choosing a Genre Writing Workshop. There's going to be some crossover with the topic that we discussed when it came to writer's block. There's some crossover there. We're going to have a brief conversation of different genres, but the whole point is to figure out how to choose a genre in which to write. The focus on this particular workshop is going to be more on the writing workshop, on the actual writing exercise part. So what I have here is actually going to be relatively quick because I want to give you guys way more time to write. There is a heads up, even though the library is going to be having some renovations being done starting this summer. I do have another workshop coming up. I wasn't sure if I was going to have one in August, but there will be, and I'll talk more about that as we get closer to the end. So, here's our agenda. We're going to talk about feeling stuck, different genre types, tips for picking a genre, tips for picking a writing prompt, and then we have the actual writing prompt. And I've got 2 versions of the writing prompt for you to work on today. All right, so you guys know me. You guys know what I do. And I'm not going to repeat a whole lot of stuff right now. All right, so you're feeling stuck. You want to write, but nothing comes to mind. How many of you guys have experienced that lately? Anybody experienced that lately? Yes? No? No. I was kind of experiencing that yesterday. I started to write something and it fell apart, and then after taking a nap, I got to work and I pumped out almost 2,000 words for a short story competition that I'm working on right now. That just started on Thursday. I've got until the 20th to get it done. So I've got a little over a week. Okay? Or you have a story idea, but it just doesn't sound good. Or you started writing and you've hit some writer's block. Anybody in here feel that way in the last month or so? No? What about you?
I just can't find the heart's lane or the
Mm-hmm.
and then
You've got the description in your head, but you just can't translate it onto paper.
and I have the scene playing out in my head, like a video in my head, so I don't know how to write it.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about that in a moment, because I do have a tip for you on that. Okay? Something to consider. When you are picking a genre, it can be very personal, because you're investing your time, your energy into a project that is important to you as the writer. Okay? It doesn't matter what kind of scene you're writing, it doesn't matter what genre you're writing, it doesn't matter what kind of a story you're telling. Whatever you pick to write is going to be personal for you. Okay? This supersedes anything else. What you write is a part of you. It's a fragment of your personality. It's a fragment of your creativity. It is a fragment of you. So when you are trying to develop a story, when you're trying to come up with a genre in which to write, you're coming up with something that means something to you, that has value for you. Okay? Not everybody else is going to feel that same value, but they're going to experience it. Hey, everybody online, thank you for joining us. Hi, Dakota. Okay, so different types of genres. We've got action and adventure, comedy, drama, that's more serious type fare, fantasy, horror. Poetry is a genre, and there's different subgenres of poetry. Thriller, and of course, you can have genre crossovers. There's a lot that can be done with genre crossovers, and we're seeing that happening more and more, where it's becoming more of the norm. In fact, one of the things I really appreciate about having genre crossovers is that you can do so much more. You can play around with the different tropes, the different things that are inclusive to specific genres. So for example, writing horror fantasy, you can use fantasy tropes, you can use horror tropes, and you can find some nice little, some nice combination of those tropes in between. Those elements play very well with each other. I didn't put science fiction on here. Science fiction is definitely a genre. We covered that a couple of months ago, or last month I think it was. All right. Now, here's something to consider. This is a quote from Rick Moody. He's an author. Genre is a bookstore problem, not a literary problem. So if you're focusing on what kind of genre should I write, don't worry about that. Let the bookstores handle that. Let whoever's reading it categorize it the way they feel that it needs to be categorized. That's the marketability side of it. If you're just sitting down to write a story, don't focus on the genre, because you might be pulling from different genres just to make one story, and it could be something that is completely contemporary. So just a thought. Now, we want to talk about 5 tips for picking a genre. All right, and the first one goes back to something I keep saying over and over and over. You want to write and read what you love. So there's 2 parts to this. First, you want to follow your passion by considering what genres you enjoy reading and watching. Okay? For me, most of what I read is going to be science fiction. It's going to be action. There's going to be some comedy in there. And that is the kind of stuff that I enjoy to read. I enjoy to watch it. I do read and watch some fantasy, but not a whole lot. And that's more of a rule for me, just because I tend to avoid that genre because I'm writing in it. Not because I don't want to be invested in it, but because I don't want to borrow or plagiarize from somebody that is doing something really cool in their series or in their books. I want to do something that is unique for me. So rather than getting ideas from that other content, I will do something different. I will read something different. But the second part of this is that you want to write what you'd want to read. Because if it captivates you, you'll likely feel a natural flow when you're writing something similar. Okay? So if you are interested in reading a Western, write Westerns. If you're interested in reading horror, write horror. If you are interested in reading some kind of detective noir story or thriller, write that. Because that is, like I said, is going to be personal for you. You want to write and read what you love. All right? Now, tip number 2. You want to explore your interests and your passions. Okay? Now, while I am first and foremost interested in writing fantasy, and I love fantasy, I love folklore, I will explore those elements, but I will also explore other things that I enjoy. I like to cook. I like to play around with food. And so I will start working on recipes that I can use, because then I will write those recipes into what I write. All right? So identify themes and topics that resonate with you, and consider the kinds of goals your characters want to explore. Because what you enjoy, you might be able to embed into your characters. Or if it's something you don't enjoy, you can embed that into your character, but you can do enough research on the topic to know what you're talking about. Tip number 3, experimentation and exploration. You want to test the waters, and don't be afraid to try writing short stories or even flash fiction in different genres until you know what feels right. Over the last couple of years, and I've mentioned this in a few other writing workshops, I've been doing those writing competitions. I'm in one right now for Writers Playground. It's their 11th or 12th short story challenge. And I love getting to do these opportunities because it pushes me. They will give me a genre that I've never written in before or something I am familiar with, and it tests me to be able to write in that genre. There have been genres I've never written in before, and I've done well. There have been genres I have written in, and it didn't go so well. But it gives me that opportunity to experiment and explore what I'm interested in. Okay? The story that I'm writing now for Writers Playground, it is something, it's like I was working on a different idea for it. I was contemplating what I want to write based on the list of characters I could choose from, the list of settings I could choose from. I thought it would be really neat. Well, in talking with my mom, she took one of the characters in one of the settings and said, well, why don't you write a story about this guy at this place? And I'm like, holy cow. Because what happened is it clicked for something in my memory about the exact same topic that happened when I was in high school. And so I sat down to write yesterday afternoon, and I was able to pump out almost 2,000 words in just a couple of hours because I was writing it. And what's interesting is this is a different story for me altogether because it's all stream of consciousness. It's all flow of thought. And so I'm sharing this memory as an anecdote, and it's fun. It's funny. And I reference my best friend in it. And so I send him a message saying, hey, I'm writing this new short story for a competition. I referenced you by name. And he's like, oh, really? And so I called him up. I'm like, hey, so here's how it reads. I read him that segment of the story. He's like, holy cow, I haven't thought about that in 25 years. And the fact that this story is getting those memories to circulate more has been really cool for me to explore and to experiment because these are things I haven't thought of in over 2 decades. Now, the other side of this is blending genres and story elements to make something fresh that combines the things you love because it makes the story unique and compelling. All right? So if you're someone who likes science fiction, but you also like Westerns, put the two together, blend genres and story elements. It is going to be fun. It's going to be unique. It's going to be something that someone has probably thought of before, but has never actually executed. In fact, science fiction and Westerns go hand in hand for steampunk very, very well. It's why it's a very popular genre in this day and age. There's so much that you can do with it. Cyberpunk is a form of science fiction that goes very well with some horror elements because you're dealing with the dark side of technology, you're dealing with the dark side of science, and what happens when that creates absolute horrors. Okay? Thrillers and science fiction go very well, go very hand in hand. All right? Any questions so far? Is that a hand, James? All right. Tip number 4, consider your audience. Now, I said before that you want to write something that you would be interested in reading, but you need to understand your target audience to envision who might read your work. Different genres appeal to different people. For example, if I'm writing a story and it's in the science fiction genre, I know for a fact that my mom is not going to read it. My dad's going to read it. I might have a couple of other family members who might be interested because they like science fiction, but for the most part, most people that I know, unless they really are hardcore into science fiction, they're not going to touch it with a 10-meter cattle prod. If I write something that's more on the Hallmark, romantic, holiday side, that's something that my mom's going to read because that's what she watches all the time when she's not watching the news. All right? So know who your audience is. And one of the things I have become decent at, I'm not an expert by any means, but when I go and do public events where I'm promoting my books, you can kind of get a feel for who is interested in what you've written because they will linger at your table a little bit more. Maybe they're interested because of the cover art. Maybe they're interested because they see that you've got a whole bunch of books out. It just depends on what they're interested in. But the flip side on this is that it's supposed to be aligned. You should align your story with reader expectations so that you can tailor your narrative, your language, and your themes to resonate with them on a deeper level. All right? If you know what people expect from fantasy, play with that. If you know what people expect from comedy, play with that. If you know what people expect from whatever genre you're writing in, tailor the experience of the story to those expectations, but play around with them in a way that is going to be different. So for example, I write, when I'm writing my books and I'm working through a chapter about dragons, case in point, my opening, my first book, dragons are a prominent feature of my book series. But one of the things that I did that's a little bit different is I made them an endangered species. So dragons are real, dragons just haven't been seen in a long while because someone tried to kill them all off. Play around with those expectations, because then when your readers see a dragon, they want to cling to that dragon because that's a rarity. It's something that they haven't seen being in the book or in the story for the bulk of it. Okay? Tip number 5, reflect on your strengths and your skills. This requires an assessment of your writing skills and the kinds of story elements that you do well in crafting. Okay? One of my strengths is my vocabulary. And so I play to that strength. I like to use words. Now, the problem with that is that I can get too wordy in the way that I describe something or the way that I run dialogue. So I have to be careful with that. So when I go back and I reread and I'm doing edits and all this other content changes, I have to make sure that what I'm saying is not too wordy. That whatever adjective I use or whatever description I use can be done with one word instead of 5. Okay? That's one of my writing skills that I'm really strong with. But, like I said, that strength can also be a weakness. Because I have that strong vocabulary, I want to throw out as many words as possible. There are times in some of my earlier drafts of my stories where I wanted to throw out all these really big, 5-syllable words when I didn't need them, because I was trying to make myself sound way smarter than I needed to. Readers get turned off by that, and they just want you to tell a good story. The flip side of this is don't write solely for the idea of making a profit. Is that a hand, James? Okay. Don't write solely for the idea that you are going to be making money off your story. Not all stories are marketable, and genre popularity waxes and wanes regularly. Okay? There was a point through the early 2000s, going into the 2010s, where fantasy made a huge uptick. It was huge because you had things like Lord of the Rings coming out. You had the Hobbit trilogy come out. You had Game of Thrones getting really popular. You had the Aragon book series becoming a really popular book series, and they made a movie and it crashed and burned. Okay? But fantasy as a genre comes and goes into popularity. And it's a niche market. Science fiction, that one is constantly evolving, and because science fiction can get worked into so many other genres when you're combining, it plays well. It marries well with other genres and allows you to evolve it into something else. A great example of that would be with Michael Crichton. Jurassic Park book came out in 1990. The movie came out in 1993. We just had the 7th film in the franchise come out this last week. And Now, if you notice, the movies don't really do anything different. Everybody's on an island, people show up on the island, dinosaurs run amok, people get eaten. The same plot happens in all 7 movies. The only one that did it well was the original film. But what's interesting is that Michael Crichton, when he was writing the story, was taking this idea of this new technology, of genetics technology, and playing around with the what-ifs in a thriller setting. Because you've got corporate espionage happening throughout the book, you have people running for their lives throughout the book, you have dinosaurs running amok throughout the book. But at the core of it, it starts off with a mystery. Because they're hearing rumors that dinosaurs are leaving the island somehow. And they're not dying off, they're surviving. And they're creating chaos. Okay? Know your market, know who you're writing for, and if you can write in multiple genres, do it. Okay? Because if you write only science fiction, not everybody reads science fiction. If you write only romance, yeah, there's definitely a market for that, but not everybody writes romance. All right? So write the stories you want to write and read and tell. Know your strengths and weaknesses as a writer, but enjoy what you're doing, because not everything is going to be about the money. Now, that's about picking a genre. Now we want to talk about picking writing prompts. Okay? And I've got 7 tips for you on this one. The first one is pick a prompt that makes you genuinely excited. Okay? If you read through a prompt and it does not excite you, don't even try it. This goes back to the genres that you enjoy reading and watching. Ask yourself, does this spark my curiosity? Does this spark my creativity? Are we good to move on? All right. Tip number 2. It helps you develop your writing skills. You want a prompt that helps you develop those skills. What aspects do you want to develop, and how can you showcase those skills? Do you want to develop your ability to write stream of consciousness, or do you want something that is going to prompt you to write more dialogue and better dialogue? Are you wanting to work on something that helps you develop stronger descriptions of your characters, or stronger descriptions of your setting, or stronger descriptions of the action taking place? Whatever that is, okay, pick a prompt that helps you develop that skill. Tip number 3. The prompt needs to have potential. Does it evoke a strong response or feeling in you? Does it spark new ideas? Does it feel like an invitation to tell a story? Does it lead to interesting and engaging writing? Late last year, I had a story come out in an anthology. It later got put into my new anthology. But that story was sparked by a prompt to write something in a Lovecraftian cosmic horror theme. Okay? What triggered the writing process for me was listening to a Mumford & Sons album called Wilder Mind. And every single one of the 12 tracks in that album is referenced either in dialogue, referenced in description, or referenced in tone to the songs. They're done out of order, but they're referenced because those songs became kind of an anthem for everything I was writing in this story. And there was a strong response and a strong feeling in me because of the potential of the prompt that I was given. So if you're looking for a prompt, if it has potential, if it evokes that response in you, You know you're on the right track when it comes to picking a writing prompt. Tip number 4, it allows you to experiment. This is a phrase that keeps coming up again. Try different prompts for theme, dialogue, character, setting, situational, or unexpected perspectives without overthinking it and just sitting down to write. Okay? If you can take that prompt and just run with it, you are on the right track. If you can experiment with it, you're on the right track. If you're able to do different things and try different approaches to the writing process, you're on the right track. You writing this down? Okay. Tip number 5, trust your intuition, trust your gut. Pay attention to prompts that resonate with you on a deep level. And it's supposed to be choose, not chaos. Fat fingers. Choose one that you find yourself going back to again and again. Okay? Several years ago, I had a story idea stuck in my brain. I couldn't get rid of it. My brain was just obsessing over the topic. That obsession did not go away until I wrote a story. I spent about 2.5 weeks working on the story, came out to about 50,000 words total, and it was a fun story to write. Once it was done, once the process was finished, that obsession went away, and I was able to just go back to working on other projects. But I trusted my intuition. I broke away from what I had been working on at the time, which was writing on my 5th book in my series, and I got this other story done. I wrote it out. I hammered out 50,000 words in just a couple of weeks. That's a lot of writing to do, and I felt really good about it. So trust your gut, because you know your writing skills better than anybody else does. Okay? Tip number 6. If you get stuck, use the following strategies, and I've got them bullet pointed here. Brainstorm ideas, okay? This could be anything from doing one of those character boards or mood boards or something along those lines. Maybe if you're stuck on a scene, you use the 5 W's and 1 H: the who, what, when, where, why, and how. Okay, if you can answer those questions in your scene, that will help kind of break through those barriers. Maybe you're stuck because you don't know how to describe it, so you use sensory details. One of the things that I jump into when I'm trying to write a scene is I try to evoke every single one of the sensory details I possibly can. I explore what things look like. I explore the sounds that are going to be heard. I explore the fragrances that are going to be smelled. And those first 3 are really strong. If there's a tactile sense that can be applied to it, apply that. But maybe you want to play around with something else. Keep in mind, there aren't just 5 senses. You don't just have taste or smell or sight or touch or hearing. You have your sense of equilibrium. You can feel gravity pulling you. Okay? So play around with as many sensory details as possible. Look for other forms of media if you're stuck writing a scene. One of the things I do is I will draw from music for a scene. I've already mentioned doing that before. I draw from movies that I'm watching. I draw from video games that I play. I draw from audiobooks that I'm listening to. I draw from as much other media as I possibly can. A great example is when I was in the process of writing book 2 in my series, I was in college. But I was also in the process of planning out book 3 and coming up with a title that I wanted to work with. I went to the movies and I saw the third movie in the Underworld franchise, which was called Rise of the Lycans. And it is technically a prequel to the rest of the series because it takes place like centuries before anything else. But I like that idea, and I went with it, and I came up with a similar title. That title is Rise of the Shadowkin. And instead of werewolves being the protagonists, it's vampires. And they're not really protagonists so much as they are the centerpiece of the story. Okay? And then seek feedback from others. This is actually a very crucial thing because people who are creative, we're putting ourselves out there. So there's a lot that we can get rejected on, whether it's music that we're recording or an audiobook that we're doing or story that we're writing, painting that we're making, whatever that artistic creative endeavor is, you're going to get pushback, you're going to get feedback. Some of it's going to be positive, but not all of it. But if you actively seek feedback on a story that you are writing, you are going to go great lengths to get feedback that is going to help you grow as a writer. Okay? One of the things I did with my 5th book before I even put it out is I sent the manuscript to a few different people that I knew. I said, hey, I would love some feedback. It doesn't have to be all positive. If there's something that you think doesn't work or that you don't like, let me know what it is. And unfortunately, one of the readers got hung up on the very first chapter. I listed it as a prologue. He's like, this isn't really a prologue. This is more of a prelude. And I'm like, yeah, but it works. I mean, that's typically what people know of. He's like, yeah. So I started looking at the differences between a prologue and a prelude, and he was actually right. And I ended up going back in and I changed that heading from prologue to prelude because it made more sense. But I got feedback from people. It was very helpful. It helped me strengthen the story and ultimately helped the book be better than it was going into it. And then finally, your last tip for picking a prompt. Any prompt that inspires you to write and explore your creativity. Doesn't matter what it is. Don't be afraid to try new things and see where the prompt or prompts take you. If you're given a prompt to write, don't be afraid to explore it. Don't reject it because it's not something you like. Don't reject it because you don't feel comfortable with it. The whole point is to push you outside of your comfort zone. When I was taking my first creative writing class in college, I had a teacher, and he wasn't a great teacher, but he gave us a list of 10 words that we had to work into a story. One of the words was diesel, and he didn't want us to use it as a noun. He wanted us to use it as a verb. And it threw me off, it pissed me off so badly, because diesel is not a verb. Diesel is a noun, or it's an adjective. That's all. And I was dead set on that. And so when I turned in my assignment, I got an F, because I didn't use the word. Now I have found myself, especially when I'm writing something that's more set in a contemporary or modern time, I will find myself using the word diesel as a verb. And I hate to admit that even though I didn't like that instructor, he actually challenged me to do something I didn't like. And now I'm a little bit more creative for it. All right? Now, some prompt ideas. You can do what's called scenes from a hat. This is something I've done when I was teaching public school. We were doing a section on theater and Shakespeare. We were looking at The Twelfth Night, and one of the activities in our curriculum was called Scenes from a Hat. This is typical in a lot of theater classes where you have a bag or you have a hat and there's little strips of paper, and you and your scene partner will pick one of those strips of paper, and it will either have a character on it or it will have an entire scene, and you have to improv the scene. Okay? My students loved this activity. They thought it was so much fun because it gave them the ability to just be creative in the moment. It allowed them to improvise everything that they were doing. And they had fun with it. Another thing you can do is ask the audience. When I was in the process of developing Midnight Playground, I actually reached out to several people. I put out prompts and feelers on Instagram asking for, hey, this is the word length, the word count that I'm going for. Shoot me a genre and an idea for a story prompt. And 3 of the stories that showed up in Midnight Playground were because I got prompts from my audience. The next one is a character creation template. I love character creation templates because they are so much fun. I do role play. I used to do a Star Wars RPG when I was in high school. I'm now playing a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, and it's fun to go through the character creation template because you get to create and curate this idea of a character from the ground up, from their interests to their disinterests, from their good habits to their bad habits and everything in between. You can make this character be as real as you need them to be. Okay? Another thing that you can do is write out a list of your favorite books, movies, TV shows, video games, anything that's in another form of media that you enjoy, because then that might give you something else to work off of. I'm a big fan of comic books. One of my favorite comic book runs is X-Men. And over the last couple of months, I developed an idea for a story that was inspired by and influenced to some degree by the original X-Men. And like the whole thing is kind of, I don't really know how to describe it. It's kind of a mystery thriller type of vibe. There's some cosmic horror elements to it, but ultimately the story is about a person dealing with grief after the passing of their best friend, and how they go about expressing and experiencing all 5 stages of grief. In fact, I just had a quote here from Feast of Fandoms. It's the podcast group that I'm a part of, and the comment was, "Feedback is a gift." So think about that. Okay, so these are some ideas for prompts, and 2 of them are going to be available for our actual prompt. Okay, so here's our writing prompt. If you're following along on the live stream, thank you for joining in. This is where we're going to be wrapping things up. But you have a couple of options.